I'm at a customer's house and I've come to replace a couple of LED lights with PIR. Now the old halogen light that I've took out is quite a bog standard one. You've seen all these before. I've already taken it off the wall, and the one that I'm going to be mounting is this this robust one. It's a LED robust light with built-in PIR. Let's just take a quick look. So that's the light. There's quite a big bracket on it, which is a good thing. You'll see that later. You've got your PIR at the bottom. You've got this little rubber bit comes off at the back, and then you've got your 3 adjustable gauges there. So one is for your lux, one is for the sensor, and one is for the time that the light stays on for. Okay then, so one of the problems that we have on this job that we're going to be doing is there is an override switch. Now in some previous videos I've been doing, we have been talking about PIRs, and we've been talking about overriding the PIR switches. Now in this case it's quite difficult to do, and you'll see why in a minute. If you look on the back of the old one, it was quite easy to do because all the wiring, so ignoring the other colours, but you've got your 2 wires here, namely a red and a brown wire, and they go down to the PIR. So they have separate connections onto them. For if you have got your override switch in, you can then just join onto those wires in the correct way, and then that way that will give you your override capability. So now we'll take a look at the new one here, at the new robust one. So I'll just take it apart. So taking the bracket off first, being careful to keep the screws on, not dropping them, just like I've done there. So yeah, you need to take the bracket off first. And these brackets are really awkward because there's always a washer on the inside of the bracket, and so you need to always make sure you don't lose them. Okay, so the bracket's off, and it's at an angled bracket, and actually how we're going to do this job, it works out quite well. So now we need to get into the back of where the connections are. I only popped round to the customer's house didn't think this was going to take me 5 minutes. I've already done one light, and that took me about an hour to do. So, and then I thought this would be a good little video. Right. We're back in the room. Okay, so I've removed the cover off here. It's got 4 screws on it. They're awkward little screws to undo. But they need to keep those safe as well. And so now we're looking at the back of the actual light fitting here. So as you can see, well, you've got your cable clamp here, and then you've just got your neutral, your CPC, and then you've just got your 1 live wire or line conductor. Whereas on the previous light that we've just took off, you'll notice that there was 2. And so there was this one, which was the live one, and then this one was the PIR. And now we need to adapt what we're going to do for getting this to work. Okay, so what we need to do then is we actually need to start taking the light apart to access the PIR inside. Now remember from the previous videos that we've spoken about, all a PIR is a switch. Okay, so we need to access the switch wire that goes down to the PIR. Now on the old light that's accessible, but on this one it's not. So it's going to mean that we're going to have to undo the actual light fitting itself. Now, the problem with doing this, if this went wrong in any time soon, the manufacturer would probably say, well, you voided the warranty because you took it apart and you've altered it. But it's just something I've never come across any LED lights with PIRs. I don't think I have. I can't remember actually, but where they have this this facility where you have to where you can't access the where you can actually access the PIR fitting. So this is the only way that I know how to do it. So there's 4 screws on the outside, so we need to take those off. Again, they're awkward little screws to do. Now, there's not actually, on some light fittings again, there are actual seals on them, and once you break that seal, they don't always go back particularly nicely. But this one, on the robust ones, they are just a simple rubber seal. They go back absolutely no problem at all. Okay, so we've removed the 4 screws, and so then this should just come away like that. And so being very careful with this bit, not to damage it. And so now you can see in the back of the it all, now you can see all the gubbins inside. Now let's just take a look. Obviously this is the LED panel here, and then you've got your wiring that comes through down to the PIR, which comes from the back. You'll notice there's 2 neutral wires there. One of those neutrals goes straight onto the electronics board, and one goes down to the PIR. Now, if we look, so this brown wire, this live wire, goes straight down to the PIR, and then there is a red wire that then comes straight back onto the electronics board. So that's going to tell me that this red wire is the switch wire. Now on all of these fittings and all PIRs and the old lights, the red wire is always the switch wire. So that's just something good to know. Now we don't want to be messing around too much with the actual control board, because we don't want to damage anything. And so, but what I do need to do is I need to access this red wire and put a little connector block in there, and then take that wire back through into the back of this panel here, and that's what we're going to do now. Okay, so I've accessed this red wire, and I've not actually cut it or anything. All I've done is stripped the insulation off either side. I didn't record it, I forgot to press record on there, but all you have to do on that is you just nick around with your knife all the way around both sides, and then you just gently sort of shave the insulation off, being very careful not to damage the copper, and it comes off quite easily, and it just all pulls off. And so then you have to be careful where you do this, because it needs to be, you don't want to be putting any excess strain on anything. And then I'm just going to simply twist it together like so. Now in this case I'm going to use just a normal connector block, because they're quite small and they're easy to use. It's always nice to not leave the edges like this where they've been connected to the others, to shave them off, so they're not all sticking out and just looking a mess. That only takes a second to do. It just makes the job looks neater. Okay, so there's the connector block. So we'll just, this first one here, we'll put this over. Okay, so as you can see now, the connector block is on to the red wire there, and then we need another wire to come off there. I haven't got any of the red cable. I have at home, but I haven't got any here, so brown will have to do. And And so then I'm going to put the end of this into the connector block. Now normally I would double this back and do it all, but what I'm going to try and do is actually slide it all the way through, and that way both screws are in contact. It's a little bit difficult to do. If I can slide it all the way through, both screws are in contact with the copper, and it just makes a much nicer connection. Okay, that's good. So now you can see that we've joined that onto there, and then that's an okay connection. So we've got the connection there onto the red wire, and we've connected the brown wire onto it, which is going to be our new switch wire for the PIR. And as you can see now, that comes through the back with all of the other cables. This, if you've got a bit of red tape, you could mark that up with a bit of red tape. I'm not going to on this one. I'm just going to put it in the connector nice and neatly, trying to not to twist it too much or damage it. But and so nice little two-way Wago connector. They're really nice and small, and they fit perfectly for this job. And there you have it. On the back of here now we have our normal connections, our live, neutral and our earth connection, but we also have our PIR override connection on here now, which we can then wire up, and I'll show you how we're going to do that in a minute. Next thing to do is just put the front cover back on, because we don't want any of this lot in here being damaged at all. So the light's all back together now, and it's just this bit that's not just yet. So the next thing to do is you need a piece of 3-core, and then that's going to go into the that's going to go into the connection. Now you'll see why we'll use a piece of 3-core, because how the lights are, the 3-core that comes from the original lighting is all 1.5mm, and trying to get the 1.5mm in here is really awkward. And in some cases, there's 2 or 3 lights that I've put up. I've used whisker boxes, and so I've joined all the connections inside the whisker box, and then it's just taking one cable down to the actual light, which makes it so much easier. Trying to get 2 wires in here would be really difficult work, so you'll see that in a second. But before we go up and do that, you ought to get your connections done in here first, and it just saves having to try and do it when you're up the ladder. Okay then, so going to be our neutral, we've got our CPC, and then we've got our 2 live wires here. We've got our switch wire and the permanent live wire. Now the black wire, because it is a switch wire, again, if I was going to do things how they are done with the PIRs, I'd put a piece of red tape on here to show that it is a switch wire, but I'm just going to put a piece of brown tape over it. Now, something I quite like using the tape. Now, some people say it's not very good using the tape. Now, what most people do, they just pull the tape off and then they just stick it on, and it just looks a mess. So we don't do that. What we do, or what I do, is rather than just pulling the tape, because when you pull it, it stretches and then it loses its stickiness and then it unpeels. Whereas if you cut it off and do it neatly, it neatly, it's absolutely fine, and then it will stay on there perfectly, just like that. So do the same for the neutral. And there you go, we've identified the cables. So the next thing then is to try and is to get this cover on first, and just get that on so it's on and out the way, and that can just be slid back into position. If you do it afterwards, it can be a bit awkward, so put it on there like that and just leave it. Got the little clamp here. This clamp's really useful. It supports the cable. Okay, and so next it's just to get everything wired up. So we're just doubling back the connections. Even though the connections are only small, I think it's really important to double everything back, because it just goes in there much nicer. And you can see there, that's gone in there nicely. And there's plenty of room in the connection to double it back. Then next, bring the CPC over. And exactly the same with that, double that back. Again, that goes in nicely. It's tucked out the way. And then we've got our the live or the line conductor for the PIR. Okay, so you can see how we've done that one there. All the connections are quite nice and tidy, and the wires, they're not strained or anything, and they're all okay. So the last thing to do now is just connect up the new switch wire into here. So this makes it a little bit more awkward, because we've got to position this all correctly so it's nicely. And so how I'm going to do this, as you'll see in a second, is something like that. And so this connection, there's no strain on it, there's plenty of wire if it needs to be adapted for whatever reason, and so the connections are all in there nice and neatly. And so then with this bit, it just then needs sliding over, which is a little bit awkward. And that's why I get it on initially, because it does make it awkward. And then you just got to make sure there's no wires being pinched at the back. So if there are, they just need gently pushing back in, which they're all okay. And this should all go back down, and then just need screwing back together. And there you have it. The connector, it's all on the back now, and the last thing to do is just to give this, tighten this up to seal it all in. I'll just give it a fine little burn over with the spanner, and now that's all sealed on there nice and tightly. Next thing is to actually unfit it. Oh, one thing we will do just quickly while you can see is you've got the settings on the back. I don't know if you can see that. So that says the lux, that says the time, and that says the sensitive, that's the sensor. So this one you need to adjust it for if you wanted the PIR to operate in daylight hours or at night time. The time, the duration it's going to be on, and then the sensitivity of the actual PIR, how far will it pick you up from, for example. So the lux one, they're usually factory fitted to what come on in daylight. So all I do is I just turn them round to the other side, and then that should be the nighttime setting. So we've mounted the bracket on top. It's obviously, one thing I hadn't said, it's on a stone wall, and so it's really awkward to get the fixings nice and even. So I do use all three fixings on here, and they're not particularly, well, they are tight, but I don't sort of wrench them all up tight because sometimes it can distort the metal. But 3 good fixings on there, and the box is also fitted out well. Now, one of the things I've done is I did drill a bigger hole there. Sometimes, I don't know if it makes much difference, but sometimes when you're on a stone wall here, the flexibility of the box isn't great, and by drilling out a bigger hole, it just sometimes makes it that bit easier, and it's certainly gone on the wall. I mean, the wall is completely uneven, and I've managed to get all 4 fixings on nice and easy now, whereas before with just a 20mm hole it was really too rigid and twisting too much. But what I will do also, I do run a bead of silicone just around the inside edge, around sort of the top half, just to prevent any moisture coming in. And then I'll also just put a small hole just into the base of it, just so if any water did get in there, it could escape out. The beauty of using a whisker box here, all your connections, as you can see, can go in there nice and easily. There's no strain on it at all. So that can all go back on, and then the light fitting then will fix above it. The whisker box all hidden, and it all just looks nice and neat. So the next thing is to get it put back together, and then we'll get it turned on and see if it works. Okay, so the lights are all fitted on there now. One thing I should say is I've used the 1mm 3-core there. I shouldn't have done that. I don't. In fact, I don't quite know why I have done that. I always use 4-core flex for that job. So that's just been something that by doing the video, I think it just distracted me. I've got the 4-core flex out. But I haven't used it. I've used 3-core twin and 3-core on earth, so I'm going to change it. But that is something I would normally do because it's just so much easier. But it all looks nice and neat anyway. That's the other light fitting up there. And then if we come in to the house, I'll keep the light on there. If I come into the house, you've got a switch here, and this is the override switch. So at the moment, I know the PIRs are working. The PIRs are working, but they are set for their nighttime operation. So then if I just turn the switch on, now the PIR is overridden and the light stays on when I switch it on. Again, that can be seen hopefully from the other side. Turn it on. And so now both outside lights are working. So hopefully that will be that might help some people out if they have this same problem.